You're listening to Emmy Award-winning host Jordan J. Adams.
If you are looking to increase your performance, looking to get better at what you do, be a better family member, better with your colleagues, be a better leader on teams that you might be on at work, boy, do we have the show for you today. CEO of Heads Up Performance, Tom Hanson. Dr. Hanson is a certified professional coach with over 30 years experience coaching, speaking, and training. He has a doctorate in sports psychology from the University of Virginia and uses his expertise in human performance to evoke excellence in professional athletes, CEOs, and other corporate performers. Formerly a tenured professor at Skidmore College, Dr. Hanson co-authored the book Heads Up Baseball, Playing the Game One Pitch at a Time, which has sold more than 55,000 copies worldwide. His website, focusedbaseball.com, is a mental toughness resource for players, coaches, and parents. Dr. Hanson, thank you for joining us today.
All right, cool. Thanks for the introduction.
It's great having you, and maybe we could start off with a little bit of how you got into baseball, how you got into coaching, and a little bit of your history.
The big factor for me, I think, was just what I was given. You're dealt a hand in life, and I was big and strong and fast as before other people were, and so I was really good at sports, and I dominated for the most part in whatever I did. I mean, like say through grade school, so that really rewarded me for going into sport. I did that. My family was very musical, and so it was also as the youngest, I gravitated towards something else, and so that was in many ways, I think, why I was into sports. And gradually, people caught up to me physically, so that kind of went largely away. But I will say that I am a learner, like a chronic learner, and when I hit my first real adversity in sports as a junior, where I didn't get the playing time that I thought I should have had, I went to the basement. I'm in Minnesota. I went to the basement, read a couple books on hitting, and really worked out hitting. And I came out and just crushed. I just had a fantastic year. So that really, I think, ignited me in terms of like, oh, okay, I have to work at this, but I love to learn. I love to learn, love to read, and then I like to apply stuff. I don't always apply what I read and learn, but those two coming together really brought it out. And then the last piece would be that I had to declare the major when I was a sophomore in high school or in college. I didn't know what I wanted to major in. Literally sat down in my bedroom and said, "What do I?" It's like, well, I want sports. I love sports. It's like, okay, well, what's something real? I like my psych class because they just tell you things that you already know, but they just put words to it, so it was easy. And 2 weeks later, I saw a book I can see right over there on my shelf to this day called Sports Psyching. It's like sports psyching. It was in a Barnes and Noble or whatever it was at the time. And it's like, oh, there's a field called sports psychology, and I've been in it ever since.
And I love how you apply the sports metaphor to life in general, life, work, family, how excellence in sport can be transformed and transferred over to family, life, and work in general. You've applied the principles and gone to the top of your field, working for a couple of small companies, the New York Yankees, Microsoft, just to name a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what you were doing with the Yankees.
Well, I was doing, I was director of sports psychology or the mental performance, really helping them be more confident, focused, and consistent, and then also helping on the communication front. So it's really one of the key applications, for example, was like people were coming out of AAA, the highest level of the minor leagues, from Columbus, Ohio, to New York City. That's a huge jump, and they're getting a little overwhelmed mentally, emotionally, and so I was tasked with helping prepare them mentally and emotionally for that jump, um, and dealing with the adversity that comes in baseball. It's a lot like sales. There's just a lot of failure. There's a lot of times you go up to bat, whether literally or figuratively, and you don't get what you want. and you can't really even control it. So how do you deal with that? It's a lot of locking into the process, figuring out what you need to do, get to know yourself. What do you do well? As mentioned before we went on the air, my son hitting with a bunch of big leaguers yesterday. My son's in high school. Independently, I asked, hey, big leaguer guy, can you come over here and give me some words, what words of advice to my son? He's like, be yourself. They both said the same thing. Be yourself. Figure out what you love and also what you bring to the table. Like I said, I was born with certain things. What do you do naturally? And hitting, it'd be like, are you a home run guy or are you a get on base and steal guy? And if you're a get on base and steal guy, build wise, and you're trying to hit home runs, you're not being yourself. And it's the same thing in any area of life. What are you good at? What are your natural skills? Yes, you obviously get much better at it and work on things you aren't as good at, though you really got to get to know yourself and see how good you can be at being the best version of yourself.
I love the idea of being true to yourself and using all of those talents and skills you already have and refining them. And I'm excited to drill down on the keys to great performance. But I want to tout your credentials just a little bit more for anyone who's still deciding whether to keep listening or not, because this is that key 1 minute in a podcast where I want to hook everyone in. You also worked for a small little company called Microsoft. What were you doing with the gang over there?
I did some stuff at different levels. The biggest one I did was I emceed a regional event and a Latin American event, and it was a lot of things that I, you know, it was a really challenging because I really wasn't as prepared as for what was going to happen as I wanted to be, and so it really called on my athleticism, reacting in the moment, to be able to do that. And what we, so, so it was leading groups to try and get everyone on the same page, in terms of cohesive team building. It would be a typical term for it. And then also my wife Birgit and I do a lot with accountability training. We have a book called Who Will Do What by When,
We'll be
and
talking about that for sure.
yeah, it's a business fable, and it's about a process for communicating to build accountability where things get done. It's not so much about accountability as it is we want to get stuff done. We have a strategy and here's how we want to go, but it really becomes about executing. And so it's just that design a play and then run the play. And this guy has to block this guy. He does it on paper. This guy blocks this guy, and he runs for a touchdown. But you know, in reality, it isn't as easy as it looks on paper. So it's really about helping people really execute in the real world.
Now I'm excited to drill down on that, and I'm gonna, for the people who are checking us out on video, I'm holding up a copy of the book right now, Who Will Do What by When, co-authored, as you were mentioning, by your wife Birgit, who also is a heavy hitter.
Mm,
That's I love the
absolutely.
baseball. The
She's
baseball
amazing.
analogies always transfer so well. Have you ever noticed that? I think that's
Absolutely.
sport more than any other sport is applied. There's so
Yeah.
many sayings, like
Yeah. That sport just covers all the bases.
yeah, there you go. Exactly. Let's see if we can hit one out of the park in this interview here.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the book because it is fantastic. And you had mentioned, the accountability piece, and there's a whole chart here that is so great. And I want to go through the chart piece by piece because by the end of the show, I think if people can apply this chart, they're going to absolutely kill it. The accountability piece is so important, isn't it? Because if you've made sort of that proclamation, and I think you even have something in your chart where you make like a
A
declaration.
declaration. Yeah.
Once you make that declaration, that proclamation, and you make it public, and you tell 3 or 4 people, "I want you to hold me accountable to this," it really changes the game.
No doubt. Absolutely. And where I am accountable is the areas that I really make rapid growth. And if I'm not holding either myself or someone holding me accountable, I don't grow or perform as effectively. It's a very much a game changer. You want to be motivated and have stuff be performance, be a self-expression where it isn't about accountability, um, but it, it's just part of the yin yang, of it all. It's like, yes, you want people to be internally motivated, and yet we also want someone to hold us to account for what we say that we want to do. And that's a lot of what coaching's about. That's even a paraphrase of some famous coach of, holding people accountable to do the things that they really want to do, because as humans, it gets a little hard and it's easy for our minds to drift off and go somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think I would like to clarify too, because I was under the mistaken notion that, initially accountability almost had a little bit of a negative twang to it, like, I'm going to hold you accountable, sir, almost like a parent sternly
Hmm.
kind of in a negative warning. But that's not what it's about, is it? The accountability is more like, once you've told me what your dream is and what your vision is, I'm going to remind you of this is what you wanted.
Right.
That's different.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It's a great point, because accountability, especially in a corporate world, does carries. It has a bit of a heavy stick to it, and that's a lot of what the book is about. Is, well, how do you do it powerfully but not forcefully? One of my favorite distinctions: power versus force. Powerfully, it's like, how can I do that so that it really produces the result, but not forcefully, like I'm clubbing you over the head to do it. And that's at the heart of the book. And a lot of it ends up being, there's a language, there's certain terms and ideas that people do. Because if you think of a really great teacher you had, it's like, well, she was tough, but she was also nice, and she's the one person that I call up 20 years later, is the one that held me accountable. But it wasn't like with a club, it was almost like with love. um, so it didn't necessarily seem that at the time, but looking back, it's like, wow, how'd you do that?
Is this a real teacher for you?
Uh-huh.
Ah,
I can think of
interesting.
one. Absolutely.
I'm glad you made that distinction, because I've noticed that as well. If I feel the person who is mentoring me or coaching me really loves me or has my best interest at hand, I want to impress them. Like, I want to make them happy. Like, it's a drive to show them that their belief in me is warranted.
Yeah.
Whereas conversely, someone who I feel is just being abusive and has disregard for me, I will go the opposite. I will purposely sabotage my own work just because I don't respect the guy who's saying that you should be doing
Right.
better.
And I tell you that one of my favorite distinctions, I don't know if to draw it, but is like, why is it that some coaches or teachers or bosses, but I was talking coaches when I first heard this from Tim Galway, that wrote Inner Game of Tennis. It's like, well, why is it that some coaches are like really tough? They run you hard, and we're going to be here at 6 a.m. and you're going to la la la, and Hanson, you're terrible, and la la la. Why some people be really what I could call challenging, and we hate them, like, that guy's an asshole. And then another guy, say Mike Krzyzewski, a basketball at Duke, he yells at his guys all the time. He's like yelling, rah, rah, rah. But then when you talk to the players, it's like, hey, if he says, hey, can you walk across, hey, could you walk from Cleveland to Orlando for me, please? That you do it because you love the guy.
Right.
So what is the difference? And the difference is the perceived care. How much does that coach or person care about you as a person? If it's high, then they can challenge you, and you rise because they're doing it for you. The the asshole is the person's pushing you, and it's about them and their ego, whether to be the cool person that's pushing you hard, or the performance is going to reflect on them. So it's all about them. And that perceived care, how much does the person perceive you care about them, and you're pushing them or holding them account because essentially you love them? Or are they holding you to account and challenge you because it's about their ego? That's just a
That's the big one.
huge thing.
That's, and what's so big about that is that that can be applied not just on the baseball field, but that can be applied in my family. That can be applied at work with my colleagues. It can be applied at, in the neighborhood with my friends. And if I'm coming from that, what's up for them? What do they need? Where are they hurting? Where are they needing a helping hand? And I have a service mentality. How do I service them? And it's not coming from, as soon as I give a $20 donation to this guy, that's going to make me look real good. Like, if it's not coming, it's not going to come from that. It's coming from, the dude needs food. I'm giving him $20 because his stomach must hurt. Two different intentions.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's big. Where is the person coming from? And so the key to that then is doing the work on yourself so that your own ego is able to be held enough in check that it really is about the other person, because you can't really fake that.
And that's what's so great about the book. I'll say it again. Who Will Do What by When? And that is authored by Dr. Tom Hanson and his beautiful bride, Birgit Zacher Hanson. Great book. And you, in the book, detail piece by piece by piece how to do that, how to come from that place, and how to, I love the chart you have in here. There's a gap, and I'm going to try to go back to the master here and tell me if I got the gist of it. There's a gap, and the gap is, I'm here, but I want to be, I'm at space A, but I want to be at space B.
Yep.
So I'm going to make that declaration you and I were talking about. I'm going to say, Dr. Hanson, I want to 3X my income this year. There's my declaration that you're going to hold me accountable to. After the declaration in the book, it says you then make a request. Can you drill down a little bit on what that means?
Yeah, a request is the bottom line formula to it is, hey, will you do X by Y? Will you do X by Y? So making requests of other people. Now the goal of that is to get a promise. So in this case, we'd be looking at, so what will you do to close that gap? You want to 3X that. What will you do? We also use a GROW model a lot in this dynamic, and it plugs in really well to this model in that GROW, G stands for goal. So what's the goal? Hey, 3X. R is reality. Where are you now? Well, I'm at this amount, and I'm at X, right? I want 3X. Okay, that's the gap. And then O, what are options? What are actions that you can take to close that gap? And then W, who will do what by when? What will you do? So O is brainstorming. What are some things you could do? And then you really kick back into the model at who will do what by when. What, in this case, will you do? And by when will you do it? And it's that by when piece that ends up being huge. Playing what we call the by when card, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Oh yeah, by when? And it's just staggeringly missing in the business world, in almost any world, as obvious as it is. That's why we wrote the book, is we just found that this is the blocking and tackling. This is business, the essence, like the DNA. It's blocking and tackling, or throwing and catching, making and honoring promises. And a promise has the elements of who will do what and by when will you do it. I like to add why in there, but that's well, it's in there too, but it's super important. But the bottom line is who will do what by when. And so that ends up being the key. When will you do by when? And then there's a whole chain of events that's coming up.
Yeah, the power piece on that, which I really love, and I've been applying. And I'll give an example in my own life with, my wife will ask me to do something, and before I would just say yes because I want her to be happy. I want, smooth operations at the house, and I would just say yes. And then I would get a resentment if it was something that I felt like I couldn't do by a certain amount of time, and I would start resenting, and it became a negative influence in our lives. And what I love in the book is, after you've made this request, now the person who is being asked to do something now has a choice. They can say yes, or they can say no, or they could
Right.
renegotiate and say, well, I could do that, but I'm going to need to do it by Y instead of by X. What I love about that is, like you said, it's like taking these fundamentals of sports that make you a better team and applying it at work or applying it at your life. It's very applicable, because that's going to really help to clarify the situation with me and my wife next time. I'm not saying no to her. I'm saying, yeah, I might be saying yes, but I won't resent it, because the yes will be a real yes. Otherwise, I
No.
would just say, no, can't do, or can do, but can't do by Wednesday. And that helps keep the energy clear between me and my wife.
And that shows up in a lot in the workplace, well, in the rest of life too, of people saying yes when they know they're not going to do it, or they know, well, it's like, if I just said yes to this and there's no physical way I can, if I could do it, but if I do it, then these other promises are going to fall behind. But you can't say no. So if you can't say no, then it's not a request, it's a command. And that's much more of what we see in the business place, is more commands than requests. Um, but even so, then it's like the skillful is to say, okay, I could do X by Y. If I do that, though, I'm going to take these resources and I'm going to have to renegotiate these other agreements. I said I would do A by B, and I said I would do D by E, and I can't do those if I do X by Y. And that's a level of maturity and adult to adult conversation that is really lacking. The transactional thing of a parent child dynamic. We want to go like adult adult. And it isn't like everything is okay, kumbaya, let's everyone is equal. It isn't, it doesn't mean that. It just means you're going to deal with reality. It's like a commitment to reality. What can you actually do? And by when can you do it? Um, there's research on it where with like deliveries of some types, different companies, and this company actually delivered more on time than this company, but this company was perceived better because they really communicated a, better than this one about when they are late. So the perception of this one was better than
Wow.
this one, because these guys communicated more about, hey, we're running 15 minutes late, or you're supposed to get this package today, you're going to end up getting it tomorrow, we're very sorry about that, is there anything else we could do for you? That kind of renegotiating, what was called in the model there, renegotiating before the deadline, um, is huge, because what we're really talking about is integrity, and by that we mean the being true to your word. um, I said I will do X by Y. Do you do it? Well, no one keeps all their promises, but you can honor them. It's just before, um, if before the deadline you realize I can't make that deadline, then it's like the integrity clock starts ticking. Because as soon as you know you can't do what you promise, you should say that you couldn't. You declare that I can't do this. Would I be okay if I did it by Friday? Um, or you're just running late for a meeting. You're going to be late. Do you communicate that, or do you just blow on through it? That's then the people that you trust, and trust is the lubricant for a business or for in a family, any relationship. Trust is the lube that has it moving smoothly and quickly, or not.
You know what's counterintuitive in that? Since I started applying this, it's really empowering to admit and to say, hey, I said I was going to do this by Tuesday. I cannot do it. I apologize first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, I want to figure out the 3 or 4 or 5 ways I can make it up to you. And I know I can get it to you on Thursday, but first I feel very sorry that I didn't meet my deadline, and wanted to be really clear about that. And here's why. And I want to make it up to you. That would almost feel like I fought that for a long time. Like I would kind of run from, oh, I really screwed this up. And I said I was going to do it on Tuesday. And now I don't want to, I try to avoid the person, like, cause I'm embarrassed that I didn't do what I said I was going to do. Like you said, you can't always do what you say you're going to do. Things are going to happen. So A, there's no shame in it. So you don't need to run from the person. And B, not only did I not need to run from the person, but when I said, hey, I said I was going to do X and I didn't, and I feel badly about it, I'm going to do it on Thursday. But in the meantime, what can I do to make it up to you? It makes you feel great. It made me feel great when I started doing that. It was like I was filling up my body with power because I was
Mm-hmm.
taking my power back.
Yeah.
It was really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the three levels that are affected by in or out of integrity. One is the task itself. Like if I said I do X by Y and I don't do X, then X isn't done, obviously. So that is one aspect, domain. The second is the relationship. If I say, hey, yeah, I'll be there for 12 o'clock for the podcast recording, and then I don't show up, well, that dings us next time. What am I going to say? It's like, hey, yeah, I'll be there at noon, right? And it's like, okay, well, you said that last time. If it happens a few times, then the trust is, it's like you don't even want to deal with the person. And the third domain is with yourself. When, like what you were speaking to, when I say I'll do X by Y and I do it, I gain personal power and strength, and my self-image is boosted. And if I don't, if I say, okay, this is Monday's the day, no more M&Ms for every meal, but I'm chowing at M&Ms on all day Monday, then I'm like, then I don't believe myself. My own reputation, self-esteem is a reputation you
Yeah.
have with yourself.
Yeah.
And then it's just two different lives, you know, as
Yeah.
to how you
Well
see
said.
yourself, your own self-image. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, how do I build self-image? Well, make and keep promises with yourself.
Right.
Little ones
Right.
at first, and then keep getting bigger.
Very, very powerful. I want to talk more about the book because it's so good and there's so much in here. We'll talk about a couple more of the techniques, but first, I wanted to clarify because this is another thing that was interesting about the book itself, and that most books kind of just lay out the technique, which is great, and lay out the concepts, which is great. I'm very appreciative of all that. But one of the extra things that you guys did, which I think is really cool, is you wrote the book in a parable form. We
Mm-hmm.
follow Jake, who is a mid-30s, mid-level manager whose dream of playing professional baseball was snuffed out by a knee injury. And what made it so fun was it's almost like the fiction part of it, the storytelling, and we're humans love stories. We've been storytellers since day one. There's something about that that makes the learning even more deep for me.
Yeah. I wanted to have us write a book that I would want to read. And so that was a lot of fun. We'd never done fiction. I'd written one book prior to this one, a baseball one that was more of the recipe texty book kind of thing, which is great. But it's just that element of story that it anchors it in, and you get drawn into the story, and then you're not. It's more almost unconscious learning as you're following the story. Your brain is taking it in. I think it's more receptive um, that way, and then you have it's built-in examples. It's one big long example of the items, and so that was a lot of fun. And Birgit, we had some help along the way. Um, Birgit, who's really, like, she's not here right now because she's teaching this to a bunch of high-level executives, um, and it's she has a client who is like went from a very low level to Emmy winning writer, and we got a bunch of help from her. Like, we had at first, it's like, okay, well, they're married and they're going to go through this divorce, the relationship aspect, and she's like, that's a little heavy, that'd be distracting. How about this just his girlfriend? Oh, okay. And started it, in a different place, and we just got a lot of really great help with the elements like that made it really fun, and I think had it come out really well. That we were open, we made requests of other people. Could you please read this and give us feedback? You know, oh sure. It's like, okay, well, we're working on it. So by when would you get us that feedback?
Wow.
Like that.
Yeah,
So
you had some real heavy endorsements. Let's talk about application. I know that you have a family. I have a family, and with kids, it can be challenging. Early on in the book, the protagonist was kind of up in his head, trying to get all the concepts together, and well, does it really work? And if I try it this way, then it would work. But if I did, it might not work. And his coach says the only way to change behavior is to practice it on the field. Talking about it in the dugout doesn't do the trick. And that brought up, when I read that, I said, the words imperfect action came up to me. Like, take action, just do it, right? Like, just like that's that old saying. I come back to Nike, I'll give them props. The just do it is so good. Do it, make a million mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. And that we try to capture in the book is he does things, and some things go well, but some things don't. And then he comes back, and it's really, to me, about dealing with reality, because that's part of why we want to make it a story too, to push it in as much as you could into reality, because I've got tons of books around here, but if it stays a concept and I never put it into action, it really doesn't help me that much. It can be fun to learn, I enjoy it, but learning really, one definition I like, means a change in behavior, so that you can say, oh, I know how to do that. Like weight loss. It's like, oh yeah, I know how to lose weight. Oh yeah, are you at your ideal weight then? No, I'm not. I like 15, 20 pounds over. Okay, well, do you want to lose the weight? Oh yeah, I do. And I know you know how. Yeah, I know how. Well, I don't think you know how. Because you're missing something. Oh, diet and exercise. Well, no, you haven't produced the result, so you don't know how. Oh, yes, I do. I know how to know.
Oh
Listen
yeah.
to me. There's something you're missing, because you aren't doing it. And you say you want to, but you aren't. So yeah, there's something that you're missing. And that, you know, that's the thing. Oh, I know how. Well, no, you don't. And that's where coaching comes in.
Right.
It's so much of showing you things that you kind of think you know, but there's this gap. I remember talking with this guy,
Yeah.
Matt Fury, where I was in a seminar. He's an amazing human being, as an athlete, but also as a marketing businessman. And I was in his seminar, and he goes, okay, now we're going to talk about goal setting. And Ph.D. boy here goes, oh, that was like the first week of grad school. It's like, I know goal setting. And then he's going through it, and it's pretty straightforward. But what hit me is like, oh my gosh, he actually does it. He does it. Like, it's a daily goal.
Wow.
And it's like, I don't have a daily goal. I don't do it like what he's talking about. It's not that it's a rocket science what he was saying. It's that he did it. And what is that gap? What causes that gap? And that's where you venture into this unknown. It's like there's a lot of unconscious stuff that comes up. Like, we can sit here and say, hey, ask the person, will you do X by Y? And they say yes, then, oh, we got it. It's like, no, it's not going to be that simple. It might be, as you use these words, but there's so much more going on that, who's to say? It's just not so easy. And that's what we also want to portray in the book. It's like, okay, we're going to make it can't help but make it sound easy. But we get that it's just not going to work. I liken it so much to football, in that you'd see a play on paper. You got the X's blocking the O's, or the O's blocking the X's. And okay, this O blocks this X. And then this guy blocks this guy and this guy. And he runs here for a touchdown. Well, it doesn't go that way, because this little X is a 325-pound guy who's getting paid to blow this whole thing up. And it can seem like that in the office, that the guy down the hall is like playing defense against getting stuff done. And that doesn't mean they don't run plays. They design plays and run them, but you might get 3 yards. Okay, let's do another play. Oh, you might get 7. Oh, it's a first down. And now let's run this play. And just like, to get stuff done, you keep running these plays and take what you get and then make an adjustment and go from there. So it's not, we don't mean to portray this like, oh, accountability is simple. it might be sort of simple, but it's not easy. You know, it's messy. Humans, it's messy. But what we're looking to do is give people a clear game plan. Here's the play we're going to run. Because if you don't have plays, then it's all it's total chaos, and it'd be luck if anything gets done.
Yeah, even though things can change, that doesn't mean you don't set out the best possible course initially. And of
Yep.
course, you're going to have to make adjustments.
Yep.
One of the distinctions that I really like that you made regarding the person who is overweight and is saying, no, I know how to fix this. No, I do know I do know how to do it. And you keep saying to them, no, you don't. Now, initially, that continual no, you don't coming from Coach Tom might seem negative, but until you heard the distinction and you told me you wanted to do this. So that distinction that you added to it told me immediately that you weren't just trying to be, a hard ass with her by saying, no, you don't know how to do it. No, you don't know how to do it. No, you said you didn't do it and you told me you wanted to. So clearly you don't know how to because you said you wanted to, but you didn't. So that distinction, see, to me would say, okay, Coach Tom has my back. He just wants me to do what I said I want. He's not trying to get me to lose weight because it'll make him look good as a coach. I told him I wanted to lose weight. Big distinction for me. Any of the people out there who, who are a little bit combative, certainly me, like if I feel like someone's coming at me, that whole disrespect thing, which I'm working on, we go down that rabbit hole of no one can really disrespect you. It's always your internal conversation about the data, the external data that's going on, but you can't really, but just on that rudimentary level, if I feel like a guy doesn't get me, a coach doesn't get me, I lose respect for them. And I feel like they don't have my back. Like, why would I try to work so hard just because they're got an ego thing going on?
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's big. Real big.
Let's talk a little bit more about some of the chapters because I love how you at one point applied it in relationships as well, applied some of this technology. I think it's the second chapter. You had a little standout section where it says, how could each of these people see the same relationship so differently? That's the gap you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, for me, one of the biggest thing I usually I try and start or get to as soon as I can, human design. That information comes into our senses, we perceive it, we compare it, we have our belief system, we make it mean something. We tend to think that we make it mean is the truth, but it's really just the meaning that we're giving it. And I look at each of us as being it's like we're on our own planet. And there's our own laws and of physics that might apply in different areas. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. I mean, just look at our political situation. It's like very smart people completely see something totally different.
Wow. Yeah.
How is that even possible?
Yep.
And I think of like people, looked at the World Trade Center, and it's like, wow, it's amazing. And some guys go, you know what? We could hijack planes and fly it into them. And the other guy's like, yeah, that'd be great. It's like, wow, how could you see that as a good idea? And so there's innumerable examples that you could give. It's like it's super frustrating, but it's fascinating that that people that there isn't like there's the reality in terms of like the desk being there, but then the new quantum physics people could break that down. But if I would still trip over this if I ran into it, whether I believed in it or not. There are things like that. It's just that the perception and the meaning that's made is so personal and so individualized that that's where this language comes in of, oh, I have a request, will you do X? Because there's so otherwise there's just so much room for interpretation that, and that's what we're trying to cut through, is that everyone can see it differently, but can you get to some really crystal clear language? And even still, yeah, I'll do X by Y, but what do you mean by X? Yeah, like my son, yeah, my room's picked up, and you walk in, it's like, you think this is picked up? We have different standards for X,
Right.
It's like solve for X. And so it's a just ongoing challenge. And that's the heart of it right there, is that we all have a lens. And it's like, well, is baseball stressful? Is your work stressful? Is traffic stressful? My phrase for it is, it depends on the lens. So it depends on the lens that you're seeing it through. If you're with someone, it's fun. If you and I were in the car in traffic, we blah, 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 blah. And it just doesn't matter. But if I'm late, or I'm with someone that I don't like talking to, then it's torture, right? Or you're in traffic, delayed 15 minutes. Is that stressful? It depends on the lens, and everyone's coming in with their own lens. Nobody had their same hand at birth, and then the same parents and the same third grade teacher, and all these variables that come into play that you just can't know. I had a coach once who said, "Oh, I stopped in 1986. I stopped saying the words 'I understand'
Mm,
because I got so clear that I don't know what you are saying. I have my interpretation of what you're saying,
mm,
but to say, 'Oh, I understand,' or 'I know what you mean,' it's like, you know,
mm.
you don't really know what I mean. It seems like you do." And there can be enough overlap between our two realities that we can coordinate action effectively. But I know what you mean. When you're really, if you would drill down like 2 levels, you probably wouldn't know what the person means. So, and you can't just get tied up by that and say, "I don't know what you mean," all the time. So I'm not going to even talk to you. It's not that. It's just an appreciation of the design of humans, that we each have our own perceptual reality that gives rise to the need for our book. And other things. But in this case, we're talking about this, where it's like, will you do X by Y? It ought to be, well, what do you mean by X? It's called the standards of satisfaction. Okay, I'll do X by Y, but I'll think about it, but let's clarify what you mean by X. And then you drill down, because you're not agreeing on what X means in all likelihood.
Yeah, in the title, who will do what by when, there's an awful lot of clarity in that. It's like drilling down to the raw facts in the accountability. So there's a clarity in the accountability. So when you can get that meaning, what that person's meaning is, you both get on the same page about what that meaning is. And it makes me think of that book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning,
Hmm.
where most people are going to say, boy, that, that, that genocide camp was not that pleasant, but he was literally searching for meaning in it, and he was one of the few survivors.
Yep.
His body didn't degrade at the same pace that the other prisoners' bodies degraded.
Hmm.
He was searching for meaning in that. So, like, if that can happen, we know there's a wide range. We know there's a wide range of meanings that are assigned to data by different people. 7 billion people on the planet and 7 billion different meanings. So one of the things that I've noticed that's been very useful for me is taking a beat um, between the stimulus and the response. So when Pavlov's dog bell rings, I now try to take that beat before I salivate. Or when my daughter, God bless her heart, gets in a little bit of a fit, I take a beat before reacting to it and say, okay, what is this noise that's disturbing me? What actually is it? And I drill all the way down to it's air percussion. It's percussion going through the air. So why should I let that damage my body? Because that's what happens when I have a negative thought.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there is the element of it, air moving through. If it goes forcefully enough, it can give you a concussion or knock you across the room.
Right.
But usually that's not the case if someone is just talking. So, right, really understanding that, to me, is like the essence of certainly the mental game of something, of mental game of life. It's like getting that, oh, I'm not. I mean, the whole real freak show is like, I look and I see, say, this camera, and it seems like I'm looking out at the camera, but what's really happening is the light is coming off it and it's going in my eye, and then my brain is forming an image of it, and perceiving it out there at the same time, you know. So realizing that how we're functioning, like, oh, and my feelings are really the result of my thinking. So I'm feeling my thinking. Is sort of is the mantra that I'm working with now. Of just like, oh, see that I'm feeling this. Yeah, I'm feeling my thinking. To just get that it isn't the outside thing. It's you're thinking about it, and we've all heard that, and you say, oh yeah, I know. It seems like just a semantics or a trivial thing, but it is the heart of it. You know, another way to put the same thing is what you're talking about, taking a beat between the stimulus and response. My model I use is instead of SR, stimulus response, I go S, and then right in the arrow, put an arrow up for awareness. Oh, look at me get upset. And then choice. What choice do I want to make? So I call it the SAC model, stimulus awareness choice versus stimulus response. And, you know, easier said than done. Um, but if you don't make that distinction, then you don't have a chance. You're just a automaton running your on default mode.
I absolutely love what you just said, especially the I am feeling my thinking. Man, I'm going to really put that in the permanent memory bank. I'm feeling my thinking. I'm feeling my thinking. I'm not I'm not angry because someone did X. I'm angry because I'm feeling my thinking about X.
Yeah.
And that is boy, if I don't walk with anything else out of this conversation, I'm going to remember that. I'm feeling my thinking. Just a heads up, no pun intended, for everyone out there. We are talking with Dr. Tom Hanson. He's the CEO of Heads Up Performance. He wrote the book Heads Up Baseball, Playing the Game One Pitch at a Time. And he also wrote the book we're talking about today, Who Will Do What by When. And one of my favorite chapters, without a doubt, in the book is headed Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. This is something you and I have talked about in the past, and it kind of goes along in some way. I liken it to biohacking, in that I'm willing to do hard things now physically because I know there's a huge payoff for it. And then you went on to mention, I've found almost everything really valuable that I've ever wanted in my life was sitting there right outside of my comfort zone. Really important chapter. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, yeah, it's confronting in a way to hear you read that because it's easier to write it in a book than it is to live it and do it. There's that gap between, oh, yeah, I know that. I should do all these things. I'm not going to eat until noon today. It's like, yeah. So, um, you know, it just, that's how it goes. And it's also not, you know, I have a coach, a certified, actually met Birgit at a one-day intro to a coaching program with this guy Julio Olaya, and um, he he always emphasized, like, as soon as you say it's something is this, I bet I can show you multiple examples where it's not that.
Mm.
like like
Mm.
um like it's because I have the competing thing is like, oh, the law of attraction would say do things that feel good. And yet, I totally agree that with what you just wrote, that it's stuff right outside my comfort zone. Like, which is it? That's the whole yin yang thing. It's like it's
Mm.
both. I don't want to have my whole life be outside of my comfort zone because it's beyond really uncomfortable. But at the same time, it is still is that true. So as soon as I go to yes, that is right, it's also, well, there's also this other side. So and life is that the dance between the two. Um, so it, you know, that to me, I've been, I wasn't into it so much at the time I wrote this, but now I frame it in terms of stoicism. Like the Stoics wrote a lot about that, about doing things you're uncomfortable. Like Epictetus, like would go take a cold bath, you know, to just show the body who's boss. You know, I'm the brain. My chooser is that my body, you're going to respond to that. I'm going to have it be the bot, like a dog. Sit. You're going to sit and meditate. let your dog sit. And so it's it's a t- it's a tricky one, because that, in terms of really getting better, that's where it's like the accountability piece. Yes, I might play baseball because I love baseball, but it's hard to love it all the time. It's like, oh, today I don't feel like taking ground balls, you know, but I'm going to break through that. It's outside of my comfort zone, but I'm going to go and do this anyway. It really is so much of the best stuff, because in life comes that way. It's like from, applying to a school to going up to a girl and ask her to dance. I'm not comfortable, but so much of the good stuff, but it could smack you back the other way too. So it's all just that dance of the yin and yang. That's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I wasn't expecting that response from you, because I was, I can only speak for me, obviously. Some of my favorite guys, I believe, are some of your favorite guys. You and I both like Wim Hof,
Mm-hmm.
the Iceman. We both like Dr. Dispenza, Joe Dispenza.
Yeah,
Those guys will tell you, I believe, that, Wim will tell you your joy is in that ice pond. That's
yeah.
where you're going to have your joy. Dr. Dispenza will tell you your joy is in telling the dogs to sit down, telling the brain. And I think he even uses that analogy, although they're horses. He said, you're going to train these horses all to pull in one direction. And that's where your joy is going to come from. So if I heard you correctly, you were saying the yin and yang is sometimes you want to be in the ice bath, but sometimes you want to be on the couch, watching Harry Potter.
Uh-huh.
I like being on the couch watching Harry Potter, but I find at the end of it, my mood is lower generally, unless it's a real inspirational movie. Generally, my self-esteem that we were talking about earlier goes down a little bit after I watch that Harry Potter movie. Conversely, when I go to the gym and throw some heavy weights and get uncomfortable at the end of that workout, my mood has gone up a couple of titches. What's a titch? Couple of niches, couple of ticks, notches after I work out. So I don't know if I'm necessarily pushing back on what you said, as more asking for some clarification.
Yeah, I would say that there's different roads to Rome. There is, and I totally agree with. I don't feel like working out, but I'm gonna go and do it because I'm committed to it. And then I do it, and I feel like $1,000,000 because I broke through. Plus, I have the buzz from the working out, but I also broke through. I didn't want to. Yesterday, I went and spent an hour and a half at the ballpark, and there were, and my son was hitting with a couple of big league players. It was great, and it was totally in my comfort zone. That, it was a great experience, and good things happened, and I was totally comfortable. There was no element of pushing through anything. So it's that's again the yin and yang, because it can be both. But if you too, but I always feel like Goldilocks rules the world. That there's too much, too little, and just right of almost everything. For these guys that go, I'll go push it, push it, push it. That's great, and they may accomplish a lot, and they might just be freaking miserable because they weren't really able to enjoy what they were accomplishing. It's like, oh, do that so I can enjoy it, but they never enjoy it. Whereas this person, over way too much, could be like too cash, too on the couch, and then you're out of shape, and then they come and take your couch because you don't do anything but sit around. That's not it either. And that's the art of living, is like, well, which is it? Well, what's the balance, and what's the balance that's right for you?
Good point. Good point. And I feel my horses or my dogs can really get out of hand and can wreck my life. So I do respond a little more favorably to, I've got to be firm. And and coming back to our original point of, I know where that's coming from with myself, talking about my self-talk. I know where it's coming from is I want to be better. I want to have better performance. I want to, be a better dad, be better at work, increase my income, get in shape. All those things are coming from a loving place. So it works for me to be hard on myself. And it's not I'm very careful with my self-talk about it being a degrading thing. I catch it more and more now. And that comes from meditation. I catch you're such an idiot, or, oh, did you do that again, Adams? What's wrong with you? I'm catching that and just laughing at it, just letting it go, letting it dissolve, just like all other thoughts, let that thought just dissolve. That's all it is. So yeah, I hear you on your yin yang. And again, we came back to 7 billion different mindsets, right?
Yeah.
There's 7 billion different perceptions. So obviously different codes are going to unlock people in different ways.
Yeah, and I've got a card right here. I mentioned law of attraction. Abraham Hicks. I'll listen to. It's like, I can relax into my natural well-being, and it's sort of. So I took that I had my action item list here of what I want to knock out today, and then it's like, and it's okay if it's easy. I can let it. What if it's easy? What if I can just do it in a natural, flowing kind of way? And I'm certified yoga teacher. 96. I spent a month at Kripalu. We talked about it. And what I had then, and I still do, called old man yoga. I'll see like an older guy, and he's just moving easy. He's doing the postures, and it's like, and now I'm starting to get. It's like, it's not. There's a beauty in doing it easy. And not struggling. I don't have to struggle through my list. What if I do it with ease? I do it with ease rather than, okay, I got to knock this out. Oh man, I'm going to do this and struggle through it. It's the same. That's where part of the beauty of yoga is like, okay, you do a down dog or do a warrior. There's infinite number of ways of being in that pose.
You brought up another great chapter in that you had in there that in the passage goes, and there's different people who are hard on themselves in different ways. And you say, if you do the hard things, life is easy. If you only do the easy things, life is hard. So and I would maybe even take that a step further to try to shed a little more light on what you were just saying. There are some people who are that have always been hard on themselves and are too hard on themselves. So they need to adjust the yin or the yang in a different direction. And then there's the people clearly, who are watching too much Harry Potter on the couch and they're being way too easy on themselves. And that generally is a recipe for depression if they keep going in that direction, because they're just not being hard on themselves, and hard in a gentle way, if we can make that distinction.
Yeah. Well, it brings to mind, I talk about life as a double header, and using our baseball example again, and that game one is the results game, like a success in the world, winning or accomplishing things, making money, external goals. Game two is your experience. What is it like to be you? Some people make millions of dollars and commit suicide because they're miserable, and other people are almost penniless and they're happy as clams. I'd rather win, if I had to choose, rather win game two. It's cool being me. Really have thought of sometimes that's really game one, but people really relate to them this way. I haven't read it yet, but I just saw David Brooks, the writer, wrote a book
New York
called
Times.
The Second Mountain, and that's this. As I haven't read the book, but that's he's calling it. I'm calling it game two, and he called it the second. First mountain is like the external success, and then it's like, well, yeah, but is it cool to be you? For me, that's the focus for me, or for my coaching would be like, I want it to be true, for you to say, I love being me. I love being me. Is that true? To the degree it is, I would consider that success.
Yeah, I always think of it as to need nothing. And now that I need nothing, let's go out and grab some stuff and have fun with it and just enjoy it. Just enjoy it for what it is, but not needing it as some sort of a affirmation of my constructed ego. Just liking a nice car because it's fun to be in a nice car, and that's the extent of it. I'm still working on that one. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
there's one more element to your chart. So we started off with the gap, where you are, where you want to be, making the declaration. I'm promising you, Coach Tom, I'm going to get to Y by X time, making the request of how you can help me with that, making the promise, renegotiating if I don't get to Y by a certain deadline, cleaning it up um, if I don't make that deadline, and then finally the acknowledgement.
Hmm.
Is that an acknowledgement that I made the goal? I mean, what type of praise is that? Because I am now understanding that praise obviously is good, but it has to be the right kind of praise. If you're praising the wrong thing, then the recipient of the praise could start having something unnatural that they're trying to defend, because now they don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
So what does that praise look like?
Well, with acknowledgement, it is it acknowledgement, of course, is going to be in the eye of the beholder, and it really means acknowledgement in terms of completion. It's like, okay, yes, you said you would do X by Y, you did X by Y, we're complete. And so it doesn't have to have even this, hey, you did a great job. It can be that, and I like it usually when it is. But Goldilocks, again, it can be too much of that. Oh, you did a great job. Oh, you put your right foot in front. Oh, now you put your left foot, and that was the right foot to put in front. Oh, now you took another step. It's like too much of that. It's like, come on. Um, if people are kind of doing their jobs, but acknowledgement is like, I acknowledge that this is complete. And people generally want to feel like they matter and what they do makes a difference, and they often don't, kind of usually don't in the business world. And so that's where the acknowledgement can take on that bigger meaning of praise, in that, hey, this was really well done, assuming it was, that conveys that information to help give the person have that meaning, have that esteem, feel valued. um, but again, feeling valued is up to the person. I can say and do all kinds of things, but a person could still not feel valued. I can't control how valued they feel. So, um, so there.
Well, I want to be sensitive to your time, Dr. Hanson. You've been very generous with it. Is there anything we left out? We've been talking, about the application of these principles, not just on the field, but in our family, at work, with our friends in the neighborhood. Is there anything we left out?
Well, yes, an almost infinite amount of things. And no, I feel very complete, and it's in that we of what we did cover. Um, I would say, I would guess it was more of an underscoring sort of the messiness of it that's really caused by the fact that we each have our own lens. And that's why we have these terms and tried to bring this clarity, because the more clearly you can articulate something, it minimizes the chances of misperception or misunderstanding. Um, it doesn't eliminate it. It limits the chances of when you've got something really clear, it's easier to hit. It's easier to hit a clear target. Make better choices when you think clearly. Clarity um, is power. I like that phrase. Clarity is power. And so we're trying to get who will do what by when. Will you do X by Y? Yes, I will do X by Y. And getting clear, but even at that, it's going to be messy. And so if you can acknowledge that and know, this is humans, um, and it's going to be like this. Let's stay at it and see if we can really enjoy the challenge together of coordinating action. I think that's what I would just underscore, and I really think that's underscoring, because that's because we talked about so many things, and it's like, hey, it's this, but it's also this. It's it's not so easy. Design the play, run the play, and then wherever the ball is from now, design another play. Learn, design another play and run it. Then learn, design another play and run the play.
I thought of an addendum that I think is pretty applicable in the coaching space, because good coaches like you, like at the elite level, can be what some people would deem pricey and expensive. However, when you drill down on the concept, there's seems to be, and the stats bear this out, there seems to be some correlation with results based upon the level of investment that the coachee puts in. So if I'm really invested in the process and invested in the results, not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally invested, if I'm all in other words, the results are much greater. Can you drill down a little bit on the importance of investing in the process?
Absolutely. I certainly find that the more in I am, the more committed I am, the better result I get. I also find that when just what you said in terms of like, well, there's more of an investment, then you're more all in. It's also a different kind of person, like a level of readiness that makes that commitment, is playing that level, than versus that just buys one book. As books are great, I'm into books. It's just a very different level of engagement. So we do tend to get out of something what we put into it. So that's what I'd say to that.
In kind of simple math too, if your coach costs you $50,000 for the year and you end up making $250,000 more than you would have made that year, do you want someone to give you $200,000 is really what it kind of boils down to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe it takes you 3 years to make that 250, but it's still 200 more than you would have made had you not have someone clarifying the gap
Yeah.
that you're not getting. You told me you wanted to lose 20 pounds. You said you knew how to do it. You are 20 pounds heavy. You do not know how to do it based on results. And again, I know that sounds trite. I know I sound like I'm being a know-it-all when I say that, but that's not where it's coming from for me. It's coming from because you told me you wanted to do it. So I want you to do what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
If you told me you wanted to gain 20 pounds, well, I'll teach you how to do that. That one's relatively easy. Well, it has been a true pleasure. We have, as I hope by now you guys have checked out the show notes, been talking with Dr. Tom Hanson, the CEO of Heads Up Performance. He's written the book Heads Up Baseball, Playing the Game One Pitch at a Time. And we've been talking about one of his other books, Who Will Do What by When, which he co-authored with his beautiful bride, Birgit. Great book. Where can people pick up the book, and where can people find out more about you?
Well, headsupperformance.com, hyphenless headsupperformance.com is our website, and you can contact us through there. My email is Dr. Tom Hanson, DrTomHanson @gmail. Dr. Tom Hanson @gmail.com. Be happy to hear from you, and or have a conversation with Birgit. I'd be like the warm-up act.
I'd love to talk with her.
And for a conversation, particularly about the accountability stuff, she's really fantastic at getting that stuff really into the bones, into the bodies of the people that are ready for it, who want it and are ready for it.
The way she carries herself, I always notice when I'm around her, I'm very careful with what I commit to when I'm around her, because I know she's going to hold me to it.
She's powerful. She's not forceful. She's powerful.
She's got energy, good, positive, strong energy. Yeah,
Yep.
No question. And I'm looking forward to all of us going to Iceland to do an ice bath with Wim Hof.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Tom Hanson.
Welcome, man. Really enjoyed it. Great job.
Thank you, brother. Talk soon.
For our full schedule of fights on the NBC Sports Network, CW and ABC affiliates, visit UnitedFightAlliance.com. United Fight Alliance. United, we fight.